We would be honored if you would join us.
All right. Welcome into the Silvercast, everybody. We have probably the biggest guest we've ever had and we will ever have. Pretty much the king of stacking YouTube. We have Salivate Metal joining us. How you doing today, sir?
Well, very kind of you, sir. I'm sure you'll get much bigger guests down the road, but thank you so much for that warm welcome. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, and we are absolutely honored to have you. Thank you. And I'm, of course, joined by my co-host, Silver Conundrum. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, I am just happy to be here. And we have one of the biggest channels we've ever had. And one of my stacking heroes is here. So, I mean, I can't stop smiling.
Well, thank you, guys. You guys are great. And it's a distinct honor, and I appreciate it. I feel very honored to be here and appreciate everything that you guys do to help expand the community and bring awareness and fun. You know, it's great.
Totally, man. So, let's just jump right into it. And also, please note the disclaimer that Expat Stacker and Silver Conundrum are not financial advisors or experts. Investing is risky and comes with the chance that you could lose money. So talk to a licensed professional before making any decisions about what to do with your money. This video and all of the contents on our channels is for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. I mean, you mentioned the community. I mean, I kind of look at you as like the founder of the community.
Kind of like the godfather.
Yeah, right. And so, like, if there are others, I mean, you're definitely like on the Mount Rushmore. You know what I mean? So, let's just like back it up for a minute and usually when we have guests on, we try to introduce them to the audience and stuff, but you really don't need that. So we just want to get a little bit of like background information and stuff. So like, can you tell us just basically like when and how you started getting involved with stacking?
Well, my social insecurity number is, no, I'm kidding. How I got into stacking was, well, it actually started as a collector, and really, that part of me really shines through with what I do and what I show. But I do talk about stacking. But I guess my stacking journey started from a collector angle when my grandfather gave me a cleaned 1906 Indian head cent. And from that point, I was hooked and visited a local coin shop. As we know now, LCS is the term for that. And I saw a Johnson Mathey silver bar inside this local coin shop. I still have that bar, and I treasure it. And that is what got me into stacking. And when I saw a bullion, bullion is just not what you put in to flavor your soups. It is something that you accumulate to preserve your wealth. And I really didn't get that for quite a long time. But silver was something that stood out for me because it was affordable. And it seems like for me, gold was unattainable at that time, even though the ratio between gold and silver was much lower at that time. But that was my first foray. And of course, this was before the internet was really much of a thing. And by the time it was, there were internet forums talking about coin collecting. And in amongst that was silver accumulation. It really wasn't called stacking in those days per se, but it has brought me to a point where I just started enjoying it for the beauty and the cool factor of having these silver bars. Hey, you can stack up these things, but I questioned myself: do I have too much of this stuff? What's it going to do me down the road? I really didn't get the whole concept of having a lot of it and how it could protect myself against the dollar. So essentially, it took me until much later when I started seeing some videos on YouTube back in 2007 and 2008 talking about this stuff. And that was really before there was really a community that had formed around precious metals. But that was when I first heard the term stacking. And that was what inspired me to actually create a channel from other channels, like the first Omega Man, who went by a prior name for a while before. He was out of Australia. There was others. Gupin Führer was a guy that had gold. I just thought that was so neat. He just showed gold. That was it. Didn't really talk or interact with the community, or didn't really have. He just showed videos, and that was about it. There was other people that were starting to make videos around 2012. Then the community grew, but was sort of disjointed. And then I discovered Silverfish VT, who is no longer on YouTube, but he was certainly an inspiration. And I discovered him after I created my channel, and that was kind of the plug into the community aspect of it. But yeah, it goes back quite a ways, and has been after that. I guess the rest is history. And I think a lot of what the growth of my channel has never been sporadic or viral, or even bacterial. It's just pounding the pavement, so to speak, for 8 years. Videos every day, talking about all the different topics, and just plugging away. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of one of the other questions that I wanted to ask you, is like, what actually made you kind of decide to get started on YouTube? So it sounds like basically you found some channels that were talking about this topic and it inspired you. Is that correct?
Yes, and really it was the novel idea of the unboxing, where you take silver and you unbox it and talk about it, and it was a part of the process. It was the ritual of unboxing. Big Stack McGee was another channel that kind of inspired me at the time. And when I saw that, and I was like, well, I'm going to try this too. I'm going to put my hand in it and see how it works. Those old videos are embarrassing to watch these days, but yeah, that was the beginning of it. And I thought, well, if I have silver to unbox, then I'll do it. But a lot of my stuff I bought from my local coin shop, so there wasn't really many unboxings. But then I found out about these online dealers, and so I started, well, I'm going to order from them and see what I can do, and see if I can do an unboxing. And so that's kind of how that started. And so that was kind of the inspiration to actually start the channel, was the unboxing.
Got it. All right. And you kind of also touched on this next like question that I wanted to ask, which is like, how has this community changed over time? Like, especially recently. I think I started watching the stacking videos and all the videos from the community maybe about I want to say around 2017, 2018 is when I first kind of discovered it.
Right.
And it seems to me like, I mean, sometimes I realize there's like a huge channel out there that I just hadn't really seen and I didn't know about, right? But so I don't know all the channels, but it feels like, to me personally, there's just a ton of new channels popping up all the time. So it seems like the interest in this is like really exploding, and people are enthusiastic to talk about it. They want to, go onto YouTube or wherever and discuss it. So like, how has the community changed over time since you started?
Well, at first it was obviously much smaller, as you can imagine, and most everybody knew everybody else, and we were all kind of on the same page in terms of what the future of silver with quantitative easing. There was something called quantitative easing that was a big deal, sort of at the very beginning, when I made my way onto the scene. And the QE3, it's like, okay, there's no way this is going to last. Something's got to give here. And so we were all thinking that we were on the precipice probably of either hyperinflation or a great economic downturn that was worse than 2007 and 2008. But it was back then, it was there's several different generations since I've came aboard here, and I think that I think I probably came about on the second generation of the community, so to speak. And that generation was really community focused, and it was simpler as far as the analysis from within the community. Now, there were other channels that were doing it on a different level with precious metals that were, I don't consider part of the community, that were talking about, you know, some of the nuances and the details of what's going on with the Fed and the like. But us in the community was more focused on unboxings and showing the silver and talking about the silver that we got, and also was on the tail end of the buy silver crash JP Morgan movement that started right before I came aboard. And so it was about sending a message. Of course, manipulation was a big deal then. I even kind of, you know, was thinking it was a bigger thing than what I had learned and since then. But that is kind of how it evolved. It started with unboxings. That was a big deal. Then it kind of moved into another phase where the precious metals went down, and especially silver went down greatly from about 2014, end of 2013, into about, well, until the about 2016, when it went up a little bit again, but then it fell again very greatly. So that period of kind of that stagnancy for silver, especially, a lot of people got jaded on silver. And so the community sort of split on that angle, and there was more analysis and more talk about that sort of aspect of why is silver so cheap. And then you started to see splits in the community as far as philosophy is concerned. And that is yet another sort of generation, or how the community has evolved. It moved more towards commentary. My channel moved more towards commentary during that time as well. And I think that has created a lot of, in some cases, division within the community as well too, where it kind of split. But also during that time, you saw sub-communities form. You have a community that formed out of poured silver. Many people in the community started pouring their own silver and doing a great job at it. And so you had communities built, sub-communities built around that. You had communities built around different interests in silver. And then gold made also a comeback, and there's channels that started to form solely based around gold. Then you saw some other bigger channels, you know, say, well, hey, you know, I don't like gold at all. It should only be silver. And then there's some in the gold community that says, I don't like silver at all. It should only be gold. And so there's that evolution. Then I think we are now into yet another phase of the community, what you're talking about, this massive influx of new channels and even young kids. I interviewed a young stacker on my live stream last night. And we've seen young people come into the community, but usually they come and they're here for a while, they get burnt out, and they get interested in something else, or their parents say, well, okay, this is too much, you know, and they shut down the channel. But now we're seeing it evolve yet again, especially with the silver squeeze that's happening, and the great interest after the pandemic. A lot of channels formed last year thinking, well, hey, this Black Swan event, people are starting to really get interested in precious metals. And then you also have the angle with the cryptocurrencies that make their way into the community, that either overlap with or are in conflict with the community. The other aspect is prepping and other and also prospecting. You have those communities that kind of overlap as well. And we've seen that a lot in the community, where you have prepping and stacking really gotten in some ways convoluted. And in some instances, because it's getting larger. And by the way, I believe we're still small compared to the grand scheme of the YouTuberverse, I call it, but also overall for Americans specifically, and even the Western world generally, there's not nearly as many silver stackers or precious metal accumulators as there is other interest in other areas. But because it's growing, there's a lot more opinion out there. And it's getting sometimes to a point where just because you have a different opinion, you can be kind of lambasted or put down because of your opinion may differ, or you don't toe the line, so to speak. And I know that I typically don't hold a lot of the common perceptions of manipulation that many other people do. I have different views on inflation or some other aspects, some other philosophy or approach. But in the end, I think we're all the same in that we believe that precious metals are a wealth preservation tool. And I think that in the end, that's really the most important factor. But sometimes if you hold a little different viewpoint, you're going to get some pushback. But I'm one of those people that likes to see the nuance in things. I like to look at things critically and understand it fully. I want to be open-minded about it too, but other people aren't as open-minded. You're a purist, you know what I mean? And so if it's not this way, well, then you're part of the problem, but I feel like, hey, we can all come together. We can have different points of view and come together with the understanding that in the end, the common, what it points to is gold and silver, our money, and they will preserve our wealth. But it is interesting to see how it's evolved over time. It's been fascinating, and it is neat and exciting to see new stackers out there and accumulators of precious metals in general.
So I got a question for you. Do you think that is a downfall of the silver community, though? Everybody basically talks down to each other based off of their viewpoints, and it kind of deters new stackers from wanting to get involved because they're afraid that their viewpoints are going to be shunned?
I think it could be. I think there's stackers that can get confused. One of my sayings I say on my channel, especially with regards to silver, is silver doesn't need me to hype it. It sells itself. All I can do, or I can try to do to the best of my ability, is try to educate and try to give an idea of what we know about silver. I think people so often are feeling, okay, well, hey, we're going to do this squeeze, which, by the way, I'm for the silver squeeze, as long as you understand what you're getting into. And understanding what the fundamentals of silver are, is that silver is not going to make you rich. It is not going to go to the moon anytime soon. But many people think, okay, well, silver is going to go to the moon any moment now. We're on the precipice of that. I was there in 2013, by the way. I was thinking, oh, we've got this massive dip. It was at $50, almost $50. Now It's down to $30. Oh my goodness gracious, it's going to go back to 50 and go way up. Well, that didn't happen. It went down to 14. It went down, you know what I mean?
Yep, I was there for that. That's when I actually got lucky and sold my stack and my dad's stack that I inherited and paid off my house with it. So
nice.
I timed it very, very lucky. I've been stacking since I was, when I say 8 or 9 years old. Right. Same scenario as you for the most part. Only difference was I actually found a piece of 8 on a beach and went to go throw it back in, and my dad stopped me and told me what it was. And that was after Hurricane Hugo in South Carolina, in Myrtle Beach. And so that was my stacking start. And then when my dad passed away, he gave me all his stuff. Then 2011 happened, when as soon as silver hit like $50 an ounce, I sold it all off and paid off everything I owned with it. And,
nice.
Oh, I got lucky, and I do mean lucky. And now I see the same loop starting to happen again. Like, how it went up, then it started notching down, then it notched back up, and then it notched back down, then it spiked up real good.
Yeah.
If you look at what's going on right now, we're in the same boat, and I got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping for the exact same thing to happen again.
Right.
But when we talk about the silver squeeze, you said that you remember back when you first started off that it was always buy silver, crush JP Morgan. Now there's a new generation coming through that's preaching that same song. Do you think JP Morgan's so used to hearing us say that, but we don't unite behind a single banner and actually make it happen? It's just a group of people, and it's just not enough of people to make it work?
I think if every single member of the community here on YouTube or Reddit or wherever were to unite and buy, and I think there is a lot of buying going on, and I'm all for it as long as you understand it. But I think that there's so much silver in the COMEX and so much silver that's used for other purposes other than stacking. In fact, if you look at a pie chart, over 50, between 50 and 60% is industrial use, and we're like less than a quarter, I think, so far. But we can move that pie more the more we buy. But is it enough with the amount of silver that's out there to have an effect overall? You know, and this is where manipulation comes into play. This is where people have varying opinions about manipulation, and I know my opinion on it is in the minority in overall in terms of what I refer to as macro manipulation. But I do believe there's manipulation, but it happens from within organizations. J.P. Morgan being front and center of that. I've covered a story about that where they were fined $920 million for manipulation.
Yep.
that
we
occurred.
did one as well.
Yep. And so that happens. But see, the thing is that kind of manipulation, which I refer to as micro manipulation, not because it's small, but because it happens from within one organization, J.P. Morgan. And what is the motive behind such manipulation? It is not to suppress the price of silver. No, it is the precious metals trading desk profiting from precious metal trades, spoofing. And how do you profit? Well, you profit on the way up and on the way down. In other words, they spoof these options and these calls or what have you, so that they can make money. They can make money when it goes up or goes down. It just depends. And that's what I think a lot of people don't get and don't understand. They think, oh, it's all about suppressing it. Well, no. And by the way, that happens in other commodities too.
It does.
But the thing is I think the reason why I believe that I'm critical of macro manipulation is because it gives people a false hope that sooner or later the bubble's going to burst and they can't do it for so long, and then it's just going to explode. And the true value of silver is 50, 100, 1,000, 8,000, or it should be at 1-to-1 to gold, which is the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard.
Agreed.
You know, there's no way, not in any scenario, in any situation where gold is going to be valued or silver is going to be valued at the same as silver. The only time that ever happened was in ancient Egypt, and that was because they didn't have the technology to mine silver, and silver was really looked at. There wasn't as much silver just in that region, or there wasn't mining. In fact, most of the silver ever mined has been since 1900. And if you look at the production of silver, it's gone up almost exponentially even since the 90s because of the great demand for it in the industrial and the biomedical field, technology. It's really it's an amazing metal for that. And that's just it. That's why I believe silver sells itself. It's just, it's really remarkable just in the physical properties of the metal and how much demand there is in these different areas.
It really is. And I mean, you know, I kind of want to get back to one of the other things that you had mentioned there about how like people can't really accept alternative viewpoints and things like that. And you're right that like some of the narratives that spill into these conversations are can be ridiculous, and in some cases I think even possibly harmful or misleading. I did a video recently about these people aren't really members of the community, the stacking community. They're just more like kind of commentators, but they're like the silver pumpers, and you know, they kind of spread misinformation to get people all hysterical and excited about things. But you know, to kind of get back to the viewpoints, you know, the differing viewpoints of individuals, and maybe we are here talking about members of the community. You know, like this is kind of like a culture, right? And basically we could loosely define culture as like two things, which is the things that a group of people makes, and then the things that they do, right? And I feel like whenever you have a group that's growing, like our group is, you're going to have cultural change occurring. And when you have change happening, there's kind of like a settling period where the dust has to settle, and we have to figure out like how are we gonna do things, how are we gonna have conversations, how are we gonna communicate, how are we gonna learn, and then so we have lots of different conversations going on and lots of different viewpoints, and then add on to that, we're in a very politically divisive environment right now, especially in the United States, right? So people are kind of dug into, I'm on this team, you're on that team. You don't agree with everything I have to say, then we agree about nothing, and like their political identity actually becomes part of their personal identity, and they cannot accept, different opinions. On top of that, we're on the internet. That's the space that we're all communicating in and living in here. And people like to live in echo chambers. Oh, I don't like what that person has to say. Click, and then you never hear from them again. I do like what this person has to say. Subscribe. I hear about whatever they have to say every single day, and that becomes your reality, So they just shut down and turn off information that they don't like, even though some of that information may be actually accurate or like true or something that they could learn from. And one of my favorite quotes is, you cannot learn that which you pretend to already know. And in other words, you have to listen, and sometimes the truth hurts, and sometimes it can be humbling and stuff like that. And I mean, I think that someone like you, who's been in this kind of this game, if you want to say, for so long, then you're going to have to eat your humble pie every once in a while and like learn some lessons and stuff. And I was listening to you the other day on one of your live streams, I think it was, and you had mentioned like that you had, I think, like liquidated a retirement account and put it all into silver and stuff. And you were like, I kind of regret doing that now. I had a like different mindset at that time and stuff like that. So like, what I wanted to ask is, what are some of the like kind of revelations or big lessons that you've learned since you started stacking, and especially since you've been on YouTube?
Well, yeah, it's about keeping an open mind, and yeah, that was definitely a mistake that I made, and I learned from it, and that's why I am so cautious in my approach to, like you say, the silver pumpers. I know that sounds derogatory, but but I think you're right. There is some of that in the community, but also a lot of it spans from these other channels and commentators that are really outside of the community. I can't tell you how many times people say, hey, have you checked out this channel, whatever, and what they're saying. It was like, I don't really watch that stuff because I'm about community, and I'd rather spend my time focusing on supporting other channels that interact with me. My time is much better spent there than trying to have somebody else try to shape an opinion. If they have documented research, I say people that want me to listen to stuff, yeah, if you find me a timestamp or whatever, I'll listen to it or whatever. But I like to see documents that back some of their claims up, but I want to keep an open mind to anything. But yes, I've made mistakes, and I will certainly eat crow. In fact, I said people, hey, I even said that if this thing squeeze works out and it gets to $50 an ounce, I'll eat crow. And I was kind of researching, well, I'm gonna have to find a way to actually I don't want to go find a dead bird at roadkill and cook it up, and do some sort of is this really a crow or is this a buzzard? What am I going to eat here? But regardless, when I give predictions, I even give predictions on silver and gold, but I don't take my predictions seriously because it's only a guess. That's
all it ever is.
That's all it ever is. Yeah. But I do think, going back to what you talked about, Expat, I am a very ideological person. And I'm pretty open about my political views and my philosophy on things. But just because you're open-minded about things does not mean you have to compromise your beliefs. Like, for instance, this whole thing about gas prices going up. I'll give you this is not really, well, this is can be somewhat related to stacking, because obviously fuel and oil, when that goes up, that can have an effect on the markets. But when gases go up, some of my conservative friends, well, hey, this is all Biden, this is and of course, you want confirmation bias, on that kind of thing. So it's easy for somebody like me to say, yeah, let's just blame Biden. but really there's more nuance than that. You know, you had the storms in Texas, and the freeze that happened there that caused a crisis, and that, which is another argument for prepping in some of those areas to be prepared for things like that. But there was other factors that played into fuel costs going up. It wasn't all Biden's fault. I think some of it was, but I'm open-minded to certain scenarios. Just because if something doesn't fit my ideological viewpoint or confirmation bias doesn't mean that I can't be open-minded. The one thing about this community, as it's grown organically, there's a lot of different viewpoints politically, ethnically, and culturally. I mean, I had a guy come in from Lithuania. I've had people on my channel from Iran. I've had discussions with folks out of Syria, many different parts, and even South Korea. Wow. And it was somebody who is an American that lives in South Korea. Imagine that. I mean, hey, it's just amazing. There's another guy named Silver Torch 66 who I think is in South Korea as well. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he posts much anymore. I haven't seen anything from him from a while. But it's just a very diverse community, and from people from all over the world, with all different viewpoints, all different religious views. And so I think on my channel, I like to keep an open dialogue or communication, either on my live streams or whatever. As long as people are respectful with each other, you can say whatever you want about any politician on the left or right. You can say whatever you want. That's as long as it's not spam, you know what I mean? As long you can talk about anything. Your viewpoints are always welcome here, because I think that if we as a, whether it be about silver or gold or whatever, if we're comfortable, if we are solid in our foundation, then you shouldn't feel threatened by an alternative viewpoint.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we all are about accumulating precious metals. Some people may have total different reasons for accumulating than others, you know?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about the gas and oil prices thing, because I've seen that a few times, like in the comments in the live streams and stuff, and like, that OPEC has like been doing the supply cuts since like back in January, so that obviously has an impact on the fuel prices as well. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Around the world. So it like, yeah, some of it might be Biden's fault, but we can't not. And I'm no fan.
It's not all his fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's right.
So like, if you say, "Oh, thanks a lot, Biden," it's just kind of a little bit disingenuous and not a complete version of the truth. So it reminds me of I don't remember where it's from, but I remember this like kind of comedy skit back in the day where it was like getting ridiculous because they were blaming Obama for everything. It's like, "Oh man, my 24 case of beer price went up. Thanks a lot, Obama."
Right. Right.
"Oh,
Right.
man,
Right.
It's raining now. Thanks a lot, Obama." It's funny.
Yep.
So, but
And
you're
by
right.
the way, and full disclosure, I have been victim to some of that in the past, but more human. And also, I do like to really look in the nitty-gritty of everything, like especially with regards to this past election, which I'm not going to talk about because even mentioning it may cause some issue, and I have strong views on it. But I hold those views because I've researched it. I mean, I watched the hearings. I've looked into great detail about what went on there. And so I think if you're going to have a strong opinion about it, it is good to really check yourself and research, and to get a deal. And that's another thing, going back to manipulation. There's a lot that's talked about with regards to manipulation in the COMEX, CME, and what's going on there with all the numbers and the deliveries. It's honestly confusing. And so the commitment of trade reports that they release are intentionally vague to kind of protect these big banks, with their disclosures and things like that. So it's kind of hard to really read. And so people can assume different opinions and can come out with a seemingly cogent argument because of how they interpret that. And so there's a lot to it, and I'm still learning and understanding. But what I've found is many times people say, well, okay, they're not going to be able to make delivery this month, and now, as of the recording of this video, we're on another deadline to where we're going to see something happen there. What could it be? It could be big. It may not be. It could be nothing. That's the thing that I want to be open-minded about, and also be very careful about over hyping something that I don't really know how to interpret these numbers.
Anyone who studies statistics knows that you can kind of make numbers say whatever you want. I could say that, like, I had a 100% increase in my savings account, but that could mean I went from $1 to $2, right? So, like,
right.
It really is, like, you know, I'm scared sometimes people are going to think that I'm doing some of that stuff, because I try to give facts and information and let people, you know, make their own opinions in some of the shows that I do, including this one. But you know, it really is up to the individual as well about, like, what they want to believe, you know, what they want the numbers to say. But I feel like, you know, as long as you're being open to new information and facts, it's like you said, you won't be so defensive if you really have an open mind about it and you've done your own due diligence. So that's good.
And you have a strong belief in your core foundation also.
Silver Conundrum, you hit it right there. That's one thing. My core beliefs will not change. I mean, that's the foundation. Those are the solid truths in my life. And, but everything else around it, I believe we can keep an open mind about, you know, and part of our core. I mean, we have our own ideological cores outside of the purview of precious metals, but within precious metals, we're really all the same. We accumulate because we know what's fact is that the dollar, you know, this little debt instrument here is by design devalued by at least 2% each year. Whereas silver and gold in the long run, they work against that. In other words, they protect our wealth. They
sniff it out.
They sniff it out. That's right. And it's foundational. We can all agree on that. And by the way, we can agree on that even with understanding that what this debt instrument is. I used to not call it money, but now I believe it is money. And I'm going to do a video talking about that probably soon. But it does not change the fundamentals of what the most stable form of money is. And I believe that's gold, then silver, and it has been for millennia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of always cracks me up when people are like, oh, this worthless fiat and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know, you need that to live day to day.
Exactly. That's right. You couldn't live without it.
Accept it. As long as we accept what it is, then it is not worthless. It's buying tangible assets.
That's right.
Even though we don't like it, it's still part of our everyday life. Like, we can go out, if the government says the bark on this tree is now our new currency, we're all going to say okay, because it's going to buy us what we need. It don't matter what it is. Just like what you said, the hard assets, the hard physical assets is the gold and silver, and then the subsequent groups of metals thereafter. But in the grand scheme of things, as much as it pains me to say it, it really does, it's just a fact of life. And another thing that we were talking about earlier was just the different viewpoints. If we take race, color, creed out of the equation, we all want the exact same thing. Might be a different way, but we all want the exact same thing.
Yep.
And people need to, and this is just me talking, so take it for what it is. We need to get out of our own ways and stand united as a front. Take all of our personal beliefs out, throw them out the window, and unite as a front against a common, and I say enemy in quotations, and stand united with each other. Just because you like poured silver versus stamped silver, or you like physical gold versus paper gold or paper silver, we all have the same end game. People just need to learn to unite and stand up for each other and quit talking down to each other just because of their viewpoints. Expat and I have actually had some really good discussions. I'm not going to lie to you. I am a hard right type person. But I'm also at the same time, I have an open mind about things, and I'm willing to discuss and compromise and understand and listen. And people need to learn how to do that too, not just in our community, but as a society. Like, just because, like what Expat said earlier, I don't like your channel, I'm unsubscribing because it doesn't echo what I want to hear. No, diversity is really good for education. That's one of those biggest things. That's how you learn. Like, I've learned so much things from watching your channel, 5150's channel, Expat's channel, that some of this stuff I've been stacking, like I said, for 31 years now. And there's things I didn't even think about. Expat has changed my mind on so many viewpoints that I've had. And just listening to him talking, actually having the conversation, it goes a long way. And people really need to do that with each other, not just in the silver community, but as a whole. And like, if we talk about something, don't shoot somebody down because you don't like what they have to say. Listen to it, because they might teach you something that you never thought about from a different perspective. And you can equate that to your
Wait a
stack.
second. What was that you said? I wasn't listening.
Exactly.
No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing it. No.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
No, you're 100% correct. I agree with that completely. That's exactly right. And you know, that we tend to like go in echo chambers, confirmation bias. There was a thing on a program on Netflix, of all things, that talked about this with social media. I forget the name of it now, but it really spoke to a lot of what you were talking about here.
Talking about Black Mirror?
No, but Black Mirror is pretty eye-opening too. It was a documentary on social. I think it was called The Social. Social was in the name of it, but it was a really eye-opening thing about confirmation bias and about echo chambers and about how a lot of these opinions and viewpoints, and especially with regards to social media, can really bring people to a point of depression and other aspects because of part of what you just mentioned here. You know, I mean, we get stuck in our own ways and we're not open-minded, we're not open to learning, and it's just you know, and that's why I always tell folks, you know, people say, well, Sal, why do you have so many lefties on your channel? You know, and I'm like, well, hey, I mean, because we have a commonality in gold and silver, just because they, yeah, and we have different viewpoints. I get teased a lot by some of them, by the way, and they're saying, well, Sal, why do you take that or whatever? So you know what? I mean, I'm okay with it because I'm comfortable in my own beliefs, and I'll allow them to say we have a mutual respect in that regard, because they understand that I'm being open-minded, allowing them to say what they want. And I think that helps bring us together, even if we have different political views or ideological views on other matters. It's what bonds us together, you know, those core values and beliefs. And so I'm with you on that completely. And that's great that you're open-minded. You know, it's about understanding nuance. And, you know, with a channel, when you do a video, you talk 10, 15 minutes about a subject, you can really get into some of that nuance and some of your feelings. You may not get all the details and the like, but I know Expat, you know, very knowledgeable, show a lot of information and cover a lot of different topics on your stuff too. And it's so amazing. And I've learned a lot there too, especially the Myanmar situation, what happened there. I mean, I like how you pull in all the different avenues and aspects of what's happening around the world and kind of bring it together and talk about in relation to precious metals and just where we're going from here. So I think that's neat what you're doing.
Appreciate that very much from both of you guys. And likewise, you know, I mean, I've learned a lot just watching your guys' channels and through discussions. I mean, I talk with Silver Conundrum almost on a daily basis and stuff. And we do have, you know, very different political viewpoints. And, you know, I don't really tend to define people as this person is left, this person is right. I mean, they're a person. You know, empathy means that I recognize that a human being has a contribution that they can make, that they're a valuable human life, and I respect them. It doesn't mean I'm just gonna, you know, like be a hippie and let people walk all over me.
Right,
or whatever.
right, exactly, yeah.
But like, it's just that I'm not gonna just shut you down and shoot you down and turn you, you know, turn off because you say something I don't agree with or that I don't like. So I always tell people, like, when it comes to me, because like people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about politics, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't want to talk about politics either. I want to talk about principles and policies. Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't like subscribe to any political party, and I don't subscribe to any individual politicians. Of course, there's people who are like more closely aligned ideologically with me than some others, but like I'm not gonna just defend that person no matter what they do, even if I mostly agree with them. I'm not going to just excuse any bad behavior. And on the flip side, if there's somebody who I normally don't agree with and normally think that they're wrong, when they do something that I think is good, they're getting credit for it. I mean,
I can vouch for you on that one.
and that comes from just, like I said, not making my allegiance toward like one political party or one individual politician, but just having principles. And then that way, when new things happen, as they inevitably will, I can take that information in and be consistent. So that's how I look at it. What you guys were talking about, like core beliefs and stuff like that, and that's it works for everything. Honestly, it works for politics, it works for precious metals. I mean, it's just part of learning. It helps you to just keep an open mind. And if you find out later, like if you learn something new or something happens and you're like, yeah, you know what, I have to actually change my my philosophy on that, or my principle on that, or like I used to support this policy but not so much anymore, like you can do that when that is the kind of foundation, the guiding principle. And Silver Conundrum and I, our friendship is centered around, I mean, it started around precious metals like silver and gold and stuff like that. We have this mutual interests. In some other areas, like just normal area, like we're both into gardening, for example, so we have like other interests in common as well, but there's other things that like we believe in that are completely opposed to each
Polar
other,
opposites.
But because the beginning of our relationship and the focus of our conversations doesn't start with, well, you're like a right-leaning person and I'm, whatever, or like you're in the United States and I'm in Asia, or whatever, like these identity politics things that people use to define themselves, it's like, yeah, I know, like your ethnicity, your religion, your gender, whatever, these things kind of contribute to who you are as an individual, but they don't define who you are as an individual. So you don't have to start every single conversation with that. It just doesn't make sense sometimes. But these days, it feels like it feels like people want to start every single
conversation like that.
It really divides us a lot.
It sure does. I agree with that completely. It has been ingrained in our media to the point now where there's a latest shooting that has occurred that they're trying to blame on race when even the shooter themselves confessed that it had nothing to do with it. But yeah, it's crazy. Identity politics certainly is a poison, and it's more divisive than uniting. And I agree. It's about the measure of a person. It was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, judge not on the color of your skin, but the content of one's character. That's the profound identifier. And boy, so many in our discourse should follow those words.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. We don't need to vilify any individual person based on some factors that are outside of their control, like their gender or their race or anything like that. We should be more focused on constructive things, because that's part of living in a civilized society as human beings, and that's part of making yourself a better person as well, and learning things and growing as a person. I mean, that's what life is all about. You know what I mean? Human beings are social creatures. It's interesting to talk about like the positive side and the negative side of social media, and like how it can bring out the best, it can bring out the worst. I think, if you just think about books, right? Like the printing press, that invention had changed the course of human history, like in dramatic, extreme ways that we're still reflecting on in history. And now we have something in the internet and social media, which is like a trillion times stronger than that, and we're just now getting into it. So I think we really don't even begin to grasp
Understand it.
the power of it. Yeah.
Yep.
And like how it really is going to influence everything. But I just try to put my contribution into it. You mentioned about the news, and like I've talked with people, especially in the United States, about, hey, did you hear about this thing? Did you hear about that thing? And they're like, no. I'm like, what? You know, like
Right.
this is like the biggest thing. Like the one that really opened my eyes was the RCEP, which was like this trade agreement involving China and a whole bunch of other Asian countries. It's the largest, you know, free trade bloc in the world. And like nobody heard about it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a video on it. And then it kind of dawned on me, like, people are hearing about nothing except for like Trump, Russia, Trump, Russia, Trump, whatever,
Right.
you know? Like I was like, so
Yep.
I need to like contribute some like, it's impossible not to be biased because your perspective just makes you biased. So like the classic example that I use is like, if you're on one side of the street, I'm on the other side of the street, and we both witnessed the same car crash, your version of what happened might be slightly different than mine because you saw it from a different angle. It doesn't mean that you're wrong or who someone's right. It just means we saw it differently. Now, you know, we can be rational and reasonable about these things. And so, but I just try to give people facts and information that I think could be helpful and useful for them to understand the world that they're living in, because the amount of information that we're bombarded with and the way that the US mainstream media has like just taken it in a completely different direction. They're all about division and like you know, telling a narrative. People use the word propaganda. You could, you know, you can think that if you want to, but it's not to inform you or to like, you know, help make things constructive. I mean, you know, nothing is just clearly black and white, so I don't want to just say like they're totally trying to brainwash us, but like clearly their guiding principle is not to inform people and help people. So like I just felt like, man, I want to do that a little bit. So obviously I'm a drop within a drop in the ocean, and but you know, I try to, and I think you guys also try to help to give different perspectives, different viewpoints, and try to get the conversation going. And I respect you, Sal, as well, because I see that you do respond to those comments when people are being, you know, maybe a little too extreme or closed-minded or something. You don't like attack them, but you just say, well, here's what I think, you know, and, you know, different opinions never hurt anybody, you know, you're gonna live, you know, it's okay. You know what I mean?
Tomorrow's still going to get here.
Exactly. That's right. And I think that's, you know, the example you used about the free trade, Asian free trade agreement, you know, that's not a sexy story in the West, really anywhere in the West, much less the United States. And so even though obviously you have access to all the mainstream media sources here in the West that we do, probably is my guess, what's being talked about in your area there in South Korea, that's that other side of the street thing. And obviously that's an important story, but not to apparently the Western media. So it's neat that you're providing it from that angle and that viewpoint, and it could have ramifications. I mean, and that's the thing when you talk about information and stuff that we hear about in the news, whether it be alternative media or mainstream media, it's always those little tidbits of news that come out that maybe it's on page 1, you know, 3C of the newspaper, to use an example, or buried down in an article on CNN.com or something about something. Well, hey, the housing market is this, or there's some little thing about the Fed that could be the thing that could change everything. That little story that nobody sees, and maybe 2 weeks ago it wouldn't have had the effect. But now it will, and that could start, you know, a potential economic panic.
Downfall.
Yeah, downfall. But we don't. So many different things I've heard from so many people talking about. Even I took a call from a guy who works for somebody in the 1% category, very rich, you know, millionaire, and they sold their stocks in January. They got out of the market. And he knows that other people are doing the same thing, but now we have the Dow at an all-time high. Go figure.
You talk about that, but look what happened with Elon Musk. Look at it happen with the gentleman who owned Amazon. Can't remember his name off the top of my head now. I mean, there's only out of the
Jeff
Google.
Bezos.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos. That's it. And look at Google. All of their guys stepped out. The only one who's left right now that still has any platform is daggum Zuckerberg.
Right.
He's the only one who hasn't sold out his platform yet. If you look at what's going on, these guys are getting out on the top. What information do they know, or what have they been told? And this is just me thinking out loud.
Right.
What have they been told to make them sell their stocks right now, even though they're at an all-time high and they're still going higher? Like, what's the reasoning? You don't just sell a multi-billion-dollar company because you want to retire. Because the question is, how much money is enough money? The answer is all of it.
Right, exactly. That's right. And see, and that's just it. And that's why I believe that whether or not the trigger, whatever that trigger is, happens or not, at any particular point in time, when it'll happen, because no one really knows. The 2007-2008 crisis snuck up on us really quickly.
You're right. And when it hit hard.
It hit hard. And so that's why my feeling is that every ounce that you get of silver, every 10th ounce you get of gold, I think is further positioning yourself for what could come or what may not come. You're protected either way, in my view, over the course of a long period of time. And so that's why you got to be wise about your accumulation strategy, because there's some people that are so convinced that it's going to happen in April. Actually, April was a month that came out. Some people say June or August. There's people that thought it was going to happen last year. There's some people that thought it was going to happen 2 years ago.
They've been talking about that since the late 80s.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, in the Bible, people say no one knows the day or the hour of Christ's arrival, come as a thief in the night.
That's right.
And I think you can apply the same logic to some extent to predicting economic outcomes at this point in time. Because I thought, and when my mistake was cashing out that IRA, I thought for sure it was going to come. I didn't give a date or time, but I thought within months. So I was like, I better get out of this stuff now. Hindsight is 2020, and here we are in 2021. And so my feeling is I have accumulated enough gold and silver now that I'm protected, and it's not been on these massive buys, at any particular. It's cumulative. It's an accumulative measure, and it's a concept that I refer to as smart dollar cost averaging. I'm probably going to be posting and I've talked about posting a video about that, but part of the reason I'm waiting is because as my channel grows, I get more views for these videos that I post out, and that's one I really want to maximize views on, because I think it does give a balanced approach, all the while understanding and hoping to unite the community, because I am about building people up, lifting people up, not dividing.
That's right.
Or tearing down. And I think that's kind of the overall message that I want to try to send, as to how we can all come together, even if we have different philosophies on certain aspects of the markets or politics or what have you. So, yeah.
That is, very commendable. And I think that's probably, been like one of the main reasons why your channel has grown to what it is today, because people ultimately recognize that, even if they can't, conduct themselves in that way. But I certainly appreciate that. It's oftentimes a breath of fresh air to hear you say things like that, to send messages to people, and because a lot of people listen to you. So I really appreciate that. And this conversation has just been really, really interesting, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I'm pretty sure that because of just your name power, we're going to get a lot of people tuning into this episode. So I'm also glad we got to talk about these important topics, because I agree it's really important. And I think a lot of people are getting tired of the division and nothing's getting accomplished. It's counterproductive. So we have to think about how we can do things a little differently. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. Silver Conundrum, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, brother. I hope this segment of the video everybody realizes we all have something in common. Don't let nothing divide you. Don't let nothing deter you from your core beliefs. Just understand that you're not alone. I don't care your race, color, or creed. You're not alone. There's those of us out there that really do care about you as a human being and as a fellow friend and just a member of humanity. We're all in this world together, and none of us are going to get out alive. So stick together.
And I want to say one more thing too. I have to eat a little humble pie here. I'm breaking this on the Expat Silver Conundrum forum here. Is I do recognize, and I'm fully confessing this, that there are some people who could do more push-ups than me.
I guarantee you, I am not one of them.
I don't know. I joke because on my live streams I do push-ups and we have a little fun with them. So, anyways, but yeah, a lot of people think they're fake. There's conspiracy theories about my push-ups on my live streams.
You must be pretty jacked, though. You must be pretty jacked.
Actually, I'm not a very heavy guy. So, if I can do 25 push-ups, it's not because I'm strong. It's because I'm light.
Yeah, you do those when you get like super chats and stuff.
Yeah, so. Yeah. It's fun. Just have a good. And that's something we got to have fun in the community too, you know. And I think that's something that we can get really bogged down on all the serious issues and discussions. But sometimes it's good to just let loose and have a little bit of fun.
That's right.
Absolutely. I like to do like rap songs and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
There you go. Yeah, that's cool, man. Do a rap song about silver and gold. Oh, that'd be awesome.
Oh, he does. Don't worry, he does.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Maybe we should collaborate because I know you're really good with the guitar, man. So, yeah, let's keep it positive and constructive for sure. And really appreciate you once again for making the time to come on here and talk to us. Awesome conversation. Thank you so much. We'll catch you guys all in the next one. See you later.
Later, everyone.
Take care.